afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So before I get on to my slides, I just want to share a fun fact I just learned. How many of you know that water bugs are completely dependable on water? Must have water, right? Must live around water. Water bugs. We know what a water bug is, right? Okay. Well, despite that, they are completely incapable of preserving it. So when there's a lot of water, they don't drink more for when there won't be any, and they also don't conserve their urine. It's interesting, isn't it? While we speak data, records, and I'm going to get into that, I don't know. A lot of us are like water bugs. We just assume there'll always be water. We just assume there'll always be data. We just assume there'll always be records. So I think my time here is really to just dive into I don't know what office yours is represented in that picture, okay? But I have seen interesting offices. This is actually probably one of the nice ones. Running around this country in public sector, private sector, everybody talks data. Nobody talks about records. How we're organizing records, how we're storing records. Nobody cares about them. We're just printing more and more paper and we're storing it somewhere. I have seen the worst in records management and storage in this country. I will not even talk about where we've seen records stored. Sacks and gunias is not the worst case. Okay? And what we do is obviously help customers in saying your in innovation, in data privacy, in data protection, in all that. What are you doing with the data that resides in your records? Or don't you think that's data? Or do we just look at that as pieces of paper? So what is this conversation today? Digitization, digitalization, digital transformation, and what does it even mean? There's a presidential mandate in this country to digitize, digitizing government services. I'm not sure the progress there and what percentage we have. I'm sure we have. But the biggest concern is how much data resides in some files and records and boxes and sacks, right? So what is digitization? What is digitalization? What is digital transformation? So digitization, from what most people understand, is the conversion of analog to digital, right? Digitalization and or digital transformation is then use of digital tools, right, in what's already digitized. It's important to distinguish the two because the overall conversation is digitization, digitization, but when you really ask, what are you doing with your digitization? Or we've scanned our records, they're all stored, IT has them stored in a server somewhere, the end. Digitalization and digital transformation is now converting that into use. Everybody's talking AI, innovation, and this and that, but most of IT professionals, and no offense, we look at data post-digitization, right? So that data exists in a digital format, but nobody even cares about what's sitting in your physical records. So the foundation is pretty much understood. Everybody in here understands ERP investments. Everybody here has some type of ERP that they use, right? And what are we talking about when I start to talk about digitization is we're obviously rethinking our business operations, our workflows. When I was talking about digitalization, what am I saying? I'm saying that we're going to take what we've digitized. Remember, my journey began with physical paper. And what I want to discuss today, and if I spend no time, if I spend any time really, is just wanting to sensitize everybody in this room to appreciate a little bit more our records, whether it's a receipt, a ledger, a piece of paper, a book, a file, that we're going to look at it differently when we go back, that we're going to stop ignoring that information. It's so much information sitting there, and across the country, we're not looking at it. And I think my focus here is to say what we're doing, and organizations such as where I come from. Let me skip through this slide. I just wanted to really just sensitize the CIOs and the information IT experts in the room that just for 1 second, let's step out of what we know of business operations, automation, ERP, and lack of, and just relook at what precedes that. That information that precedes us getting to that point, okay? This digital era that everybody's talking about, this huge opportunity, right? Digital transformation and what it is, and in use of digital tools, right? In transforming our organizations. Looking at automation, it's probably been spoken about already today in 2 different sessions. Paul talked about it, the panel talked about it, AI, chatbot, you name it. And the rise, obviously, of cloud-based solutions. My focus is to understand the building blocks of digital transformation. Organizing records, digitizing records, optimizing, automation, and transformation. Just a little bit more detail in that. What does organizing mean? My first slide was looking at a bunch of documents in a room. Organized or not, I go into organizations that talk about, we actually have a filing system, we actually have a records officer, we actually have some type of filing structure, right? And they do, and some don't. But the digitization conversation cannot be happening if at all those records are not in a structured manner. If we've not organized a filing system to begin the digitization conversation, okay? We digitize, that is scanning. That is basically imaging, scanning. That's lifting that physical document and putting it in a server, a cloud, right? Then where do you go from there? This is the beginning of what's important, the digitalization part, the optimizing part of that. So you've scanned your documents and stored them and they're in some server, so what? If you need to search for documents, are you able to? Do you have tools in place to search? Or they're just stored and sitting in a server, so you call yourself a digitized organization, right? Are they accessible? Where are they? Are they secured, right? Then we go into the automation part of it, which is really now getting into workflows, right? Getting into how, I'll take finance as a department, is looking at avoiding these repetitive tasks. You walk into a government office today, there is one person, and I'm not taking away his job, there's one person that walks a memo all day. Maybe 10 or 20 of them. Just take Nyayo House as an example. No offense, it is what it is. And this guy walks a piece of document every day from door to door to door for approval. And if this guy, number 3, is in Alaska, guess what? We're not stamping, we're not approving, we're waiting till he's back. Most of you guys probably think this is a narrative made for presentation, but there's sectors in this country that have not adopted technology for efficiency and automation, right? This guy could be doing something better with his time than walking around a piece of document. Those approvals can be done from data management software that can be nicely integrated into an ERP for those that have ERPs, and those that don't can still use an EDMS platform to do that. And the approvals can be done by the guy in Alaska. He can still submit, look at the documents, review it, edit, make comments, and still submit to the next guy and the next guy and the last guy. So if we're talking about digitizing and saying we've scanned our records, we're not digitizing. Digital transformation is saying, yes, we've scanned our documents and we've now secured the physical documents for future, because in Kenya today, in court, I think you still can't use a digital document. I think you still have to show up with a physical document, right? But that we are storing them well, we're securing them well for future. If the building burnt, that they were stored in the right way. Right now, they're not. So that's essentially drives us into then transformation and enabling now those digital solutions to help us do that. I want to talk about a case study real quick. I have 6 minutes to go. And this is about a KYC refresh. How many of us know what that is? KYC refresh? So we have maybe 2 people, 3. If you're in banking and you don't know what a KYC refresh is, you're in a lot of trouble with CBK. There's a compliance and a regulation requirement that you adhere to KYC protocols, especially because of Anti-Money Laundering Act. Now, here's the thing. In the business I'm in, a lot of the records, and especially financial institutions, are stored in our warehouses, which they must, because they must adhere to guidelines that say from a statutory requirement, you must store those records for 7 years. And that's fine. However, most of those records are KYC records. Every time you walk into a bank and you apply for a loan, open a bank account, name XYZ, my birthday, XYZ, my contact detail, do you ask yourself where that piece of paper goes? Or you imagine it's somewhere in the back there in the bank? The bank is required to store that record for 7 years, and that's fine. But what banks are not doing is refreshing the KYC. Did Jackline move? Did Jackline die? God forbid, right? And so how are you going to refresh if you still have this record sitting in a physical format, in boxes? After 7 years, you have 2 options as a financial institution, is to refile, digitize, scan, or destroy. Isn't it? So when CBK comes calling a financial institution and says, have you refreshed your KYC? Where do you start? Your boxes are stored away for the last 7 years. You don't even know where they are. You don't even know the state they're in. But because you fail to understand that you must digitize those records and digitalize those records so that an exercise like this is extremely easy to do, right? So this is what KYC is. And I encourage those who don't know what a KYC refresh is to read about it. You have a KYC, know your customer, or a KYB, know your business. It's pertinent information. So best practices is obviously that you're able to centralize this, right? And have a single central database of your customers. You're able to have clear policies and procedures in place. You have regular training on that. Continuous data review, accuracy, security. Is it compliant? Are we compliant from a data privacy perspective? So ignoring it in its physical format is just not an option. This is just a quick case study in South Africa where it got punitive and expensive very quickly for ignoring a KYC refresh. And this is stipulated in probably every single country by the CBK. So I encourage you, financial institutions especially, to ensure those physical records, wherever they may be, you better have a plan very quickly to move it from that physical format and into a digital format, and to have a plan to refresh it with a consideration for an EDMS platform. That will be all from Jackie. I thank you for your time, and hopefully I've shed a little bit of light into digitalization in a very short few seconds. But I am seeing my screen is in red. I think I have 2 minutes to go, but that was my time. Thank you very much.